Hello, today I'm going to make something a bit unusual for me, and that's actually to make a tool that I can use in the workshop. What I'm going to do is make a stop for a ruler. I've got a 30cm metal rule and I have a bit of sapele for it to go on, and I think this bit of sapele is exactly the right width now, but obviously it's too thick, so I'm going to rip it down to about 1 centimetre on the table saw. I've got two pieces cut, but really they need cross-cutting to make them more of a square shape. But first, what I need to do is cut a little channel in them for when they're sandwiched together for the ruler to go into. And what I'm going to need to do is make a jig to do that. So I have a bit of 12mm MDF and a scrap of pine, and I'm going to get these made into a little channel. And get this scrap of pine just cut in half. One of these bits of wood I'm going to get some glue on and put up right against the edge of the MDF. Then I'm going to flip it over and get some screws in from the underside. Now, one of these bits of wood we ripped down can go against the batten and the other one pushed up against it. Again, I'm just going to flip it over and get some screws in from the underside to lock it into place. I now need to cut a channel in the wood, the precise size of the ruler. And what I'm going to use to do it is some sandpaper. I'm going for 120 grit, so it can be quite controlled, but maybe I'll regret this and think I should have gone for something a bit coarser. Anyway, what I'm going to do is get some double-sided sticky tape and put it onto the ruler itself. The backing now needs to come off this, and we'll get it stuck onto the sandpaper. Then it can all be trimmed flush to the sides. With sandpaper on one face, now I'm going to get some more double-sided tape on the back of this and trimmed off the same. The ruler now needs to get stuck into this channel we've created in the jig, getting it as centralised as we can. Before I actually cut the channel in these bits of wood, I think I'm going to cut them square. So I've set up a stop on the table saw. I'm going to get these cut square. So now I can get them into the jig and get them cut. So I think I'll clamp the jig down for a bit of extra stability. Now, which way do I put these in? Do I cut across the grain or with the grain? I think I'll give a go along the grain to start with. So it just goes in the jig and now back and forth until it bottoms out, and then we've got the groove cut. So that's it cut. I've got a lovely groove in there. That took longer than I imagined. So if I was to do it again, I think I wouldn't use the 120, I'd go for the 80 grit. Now I've taken the ruler out of the jig, and what I'm going to do is get this put back in the jig and get a capping piece put on with some glue and use the jig to clamp it so they keep perfectly lined up to each other. I'm actually going to get some of this thick CA glue put on, not some wood glue, because it's set quick and it's got a nice little fine applicator. I've given this half an hour in the clamp, so now I can get it out and see how it looks. No, that's really good. Very nice friction fit. You know what? I think you could almost get away with stopping there. That's enough of a friction fit with the slide mechanism just to hold it in place, enough to mark things, but we're definitely going further with it. So these two bits are just glued together a bit of super glue, and I want to reinforce it to make it stronger, but also I love the look of old tools that are kind of a dark hardwood and brass, so I want to recreate that. What I have is some 3mm brass rods. I'm going to mark out a little position in each of the corners, and then I can get a 3mm hole drilled that's going to accept these rods. What I could use is a nice ruler with a stop on it to help me mark these out. One day, I've got that jig under this so I don't get any blowout. Now I can drill through my holes. Get a little dab of CA glue down each of the holes, then I can get my brass rod tapped into place. I need to give these a chance to dry, but while we're waiting we can get on with the next problem, and that is the ruler did have a nice friction fit in there, but I would like to be able to lock it in place. And what I have to do that are these little thumb screws. To go with those, I have some little brass threaded inserts that need a 6mm hole drilled. So back to the drill to get one of those put in the side. So I want to get a hole drilled down until it meets that slot I cut with the sandpaper. Into this hole I can get a bit more CA glue and get this threaded insert tapped down. These rods are obviously too long, so I'm just going to take a hacksaw and trim them flush. I've got that leftover bit of sandpaper that I cut down to make the jig, so I'm just going to use that to give this whole thing a sand down and get those bits of brass nice and level and polished up. That's now all smooth and the brass looks nice on it. So I guess I can finish applied, and I'm going to go for some beeswax oil. So I'm just going to get this brushed on and then wipe off any excess in about half an hour, and then I'll get a second coat on. what I think is I can get the little screw in, and then I've got something to hold it by and stand it up by for when the finish dries. That's it all done now. Finish is dry. So, last job is to get the ruler put into place. It slides on there really well, and then you just tighten the little thumb screw to lock it into place. Now I tried to get this in as square as possible, and I can see when I push it up to the lines, it looks pretty damn good. Not that you're really going to use it as a square, it doesn't have much of a reference surface, but it's good to have it as square as you can. Now, I knew these thumb screws were a bit long, and only brass, I was just going to cut them down, but now I've got them in there, I'm not sure I'm going to, because I think if I got them so they tighten down so they're flush with the body, or even closer to the body, it'd be hard to get your hand around them. I think actually, where it sticks out now is almost perfect, so I think that's it all done. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I think it's going to be incredibly useful, probably one of those things I use on most projects, and I think with the brass it's really got that kind of vintage tool look which I like. I'll put a link down below to these brass thumb screws in case you fancy making one. So thank you for watching, thanks to my patrons, and please subscribe for more videos.